Released by Sega in 2006 on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, Sonic the Hedgehog was named after the original installment of the franchise in celebration of its 15th anniversary, as well as seeking to reboot the series. Written and directed by Shun Nakamura, who worked on several Sonic games but also directed Samba de Amigo and Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, he worked to create a more realistically toned game that harkened back to the series' roots. In truth, a troubled development cycle, including major staff changes, severely reduced staffing, and unfocused writing and gameplay decisions before a hard deadline, all culminated in challenges before and after release. For story, the game features 3 distinct stories for Sonic the Hedgehog, Shadow the Hedgehog, and newcomer Silver the Hedgehog, each with their own unique abilities and supporting cast characters. For gameplay, the game is mainly a platforming adventure, though the player progresses the story by mainly talking to townsfolk in the hub world and then completing an action stage. Each character has abilities that allow them to experience the same worlds a bit differently, so for the Sonic levels, it focuses more on speed and clearing obstacle courses, for Shadow it focuses more on combat and driving vehicles, and for Silver it focuses more on context controls and puzzle solving. The game has 3 intertwining campaigns before converging onto a final path, and this will attempt to recount the chronological order of events. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. The game begins with the Festival of Fire being celebrated in the city of Soliana, with its ruler, Princess Elise, being passed the ceremonial torch. She suddenly experiences a terrifying vision of her city in flames, and at the center of it a gigantic monster. She snaps back and continues the ceremony, but suddenly a volley of missiles interrupts the evening as an army of dangerous robots surround everyone. Descending down, Dr. Eggman quickly declares he's here for both the secret to the flames of disaster that she keeps, as well as the Chaos Emerald in her possession. A blue streak speeds by, and it's Sonic the Hedgehog. For a moment, a memory flashes before Elise upon seeing Sonic, reminding her of a similar-looking Silver Hedgehog. Too fast for the naked eye, Sonic the Hedgehog easily dodges the bullets of Eggman's robots, grabs Elise, and carries her away from danger. We now take a glimpse into the future, where we meet a new hedgehog with psychokinetic powers called Silver, and he protects what's left of his dying world against an eternally rising fire monster called Iblis. He wonders if there's ever a way to truly defeat Iblis, and a shadowy black hedgehog now appears before him, explaining that if Silver were to defeat the cause of Iblis, then he can save the future. Intrigued and desperate, Silver follows along. The shadowy figure explains he can travel through time and reveals Sonic the Hedgehog must be eliminated in the past to save the future, and sends himself, Silver, and Silver's ally Blaze the Cat into the past. When Silver arrives back in the past, he loses track of Blaze, but is in awe of seeing a thriving living world he must now fight to protect, and he now dashes to find Sonic the Hedgehog. As Eggman pursues Sonic, Silver looks on from afar, noting he's found the Iblis trigger. He's about to dash after him, but suddenly he's interrupted by a female hedgehog named Amy Rose, who mistakes him for Sonic. Sonic gets distracted, defeating a few robots, allowing Eggman to sneak in and snatch Elise, but Elise manages to toss Sonic her Chaos Emerald. However, Eggman isn't too concerned about the emerald for now, as he takes Elise and quickly flies off. Silver checks back to see he just missed Sonic, and Amy quickly befriends Silver, stating she'll help him find the person he's looking for. She actually ends up roping him into looking for Sonic for herself, but Silver actually doesn't mind as he gets to enjoy the scenery of the non-ruined world around him. Back with Sonic, he's determined to rescue Elise, but lacks any clues on Eggman for now, so he checks around town and soon runs into his sidekick Tails, who's eager to assist. Hitting the beach, Sonic outruns yet another orca and spots Eggman's carrier, but despite his efforts, cannot catch up for now. Still back in the city, he hears a tip that Eggman was headed toward the desert and soon crashes in to free and imprison Elise. She's grateful, and after Sonic deals with Eggman's robotic guard dog, Tails offers to be a distraction for Eggman's reinforcements while Sonic escapes with Elise again. Elsewhere, we see Shadow the Hedgehog, a creature artificially created to be the ultimate life form, who now works for the government, and effortlessly skates his way across the snow to defeat Eggman's robots and infiltrate his white Acropolis base. He's here to rescue and extract an agent sent in earlier who turns out to be Rouge the Bat, who successfully snatched a strange scepter from the base. After driving around and defeating security, they work together to make it to the extraction point in an old kingdom of Soliana. Shadow uses a variety of vehicles and tools such as hang gliders and hovercraft to escort Rouge, who explains this castle was where the old king lived 10 years ago until a major accident occurred. She heard it was caused by a failed energy experiment, and now Eggman descends down to finish her statement, adding it was called the Solaris Project, named after the city's sun god. He attempts to grab the Scepter of Darkness back from Rouge, and it gets dropped in the conflict. The scepter shatters, which panics Eggman as he quickly retreats, as a strange and powerful darkness flees out and nearly strikes Shadow. Instead, it absorbs Shadow's shadow, and rises up as a dark copy of him. It's amused by this turn of events and laughs at Shadow, who is confused as to why it knows its name. He introduces himself as Mephiles the Dark, and tells Shadow he's going to cast him into oblivion like Shadow had done to him, and teleports all 3 of them away. Getting out of the dusty desert, Sonic arrives in the clearing where it's safe for now. He cheers up Elise and asks her why Eggman is after her, and she explains that Solaris is the sun god that is worshipped by Soliana, whose fiery wrath is called the Flames of Disaster. 10 years ago, the city was almost destroyed by the Flames of Disaster, and her father was killed, so she's worried that Eggman is trying to invoke the same wrath again. He tells her not to worry and instead take action, though as they return to the city, Sonic dodges a strange blast flung by a stranger Silver Hedgehog, claiming Sonic is the Iblis trigger that dooms everyone. Silver introduces himself and prepares to attack Sonic for the sake of the world, but it's no use, as Sonic is too fast for his psychokinetic powers. Sonic bears no ill will to Silver, but Silver doesn't let up, even when Elise is captured by Eggman's robot again. Amy jumps in and protects Sonic, which causes Silver to hesitate long enough for Sonic to dash away after Elise. Amy confronts Silver on wanting to kill Sonic, but Silver insists Sonic's actions will cause the end of the world, but Amy refuses to believe it. Her fierce belief in Sonic throws Silver off guard, and he runs off to leave her alone. Reflecting on this, Blaze now finds Silver, and he asks her if it's actually justified to kill someone for the sake of the future, and Blaze points out that if they change nothing in the past, then nothing in the future will change. Knowing that Sonic is headed for Dr. Eggman, he heads for Eggman's base too, and arriving he finds a Chaos Emerald, which Blaze explains can turn his thoughts into power. Meanwhile, Amy's actually in Eggman's base too, and runs into Elise, who is attempting to escape her cell. Amy helps her, and back in town learns this is the Elise, ruler of Soliana. The two have a girl chat for a while, but when they part ways, Elise is captured again en route to her castle. Tails mentions to Sonic that Knuckles wants to meet him at the warehouse on the docks, and going there, Knuckles mentions that Eggman passed by here and tossed him a message meant for Sonic. Eggman now states he will trade Elise to Sonic for the Chaos Emerald she gave him, and to come to his base in White Acropolis for the exchange. Knowing it's a trap, but also figuring it's likely where Elise is anyway, Sonic heads to Eggman's base, rolling around at the speed of sound, and arriving before Eggman, who does have Elise hostage. He orders Sonic to surrender the Chaos Emerald first, though after he does so, Eggman traps all three in a force field. He then activates his Solaris prototype, which actually transports the trio to a different point in time, and even he doesn't know when, as he explains he needs more Chaos Emeralds to fine-tune the time travel. He then reveals that with his time machine and Elise's power, he'll unlock the power of the Flames of Disaster and be able to rule the world. Meanwhile, Shadow and Rouge appear in a strange building that they are surprised to find is the Doctor's lab, but records indicate it's at least 200 years in the future. They surmise Mephiles must have time control powers similar to Shadow's own chaos control powers somehow, but then they hear something. Sonic and friends now find themselves in a ruined version of the same lab and are surprised to be approached by Rouge and Shadow. As they step outside to see a ruined cityscape, Shadow explains this is a distant future, and to get back to their time they will have to create a powerful space-time rift. Sonic picks up on the hint that they must use the reality-warping chaos energy from a pair of Chaos Emeralds in order to do so, and sets out for one, running through a destroyed cityscape. The team walks in on Silver and Blaze, speaking to a strange-looking hedgehog that almost looks like Shadow, explaining that the fiery creature called Iblis is the one that caused the Flames of Disaster, and its awakening was due to Sonic the Hedgehog, so Silver must go back in time and terminate Sonic in order to save the future. After they leave in a time warp, Sonic steps in and Tails sees a report that Elise dies in Eggman's ship after it somehow explodes. Shadow drives even more cars to find the next Chaos Emerald, but he and Rouge are surprised to find their robot ally Omega somehow still intact among all the rubble here, but in standby mode. Returning to the others, Rouge reveals they already found a Chaos Emerald, and Tails reports his scanners indicate another one nearby. Dashing through a volcano, the team finds a second emerald, but they are met by a large worm-like monster named Iblis, and must now face off against the Harbinger of Disaster. Beating it back and securing the emerald, they waste no time invoking Chaos Control, and opening a rift back to their time. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles jump through, but Shadow pauses, which causes Rouge to pause as well. Shadow sees Mephiles rise from the flames of Iblis and dashes after him, and in her delay, Rouge returns to the same time but different locale as the others. Realizing Shadow is trapped in the future without a Chaos Emerald, she remembers Omega and seeks him out. She hands Omega her Chaos Emerald and instructs it to deliver it to Shadow, and Omega commences his mission. Back with Shadow, he asks Mephiles if he caused this ruin, and Mephiles says yes and no. He takes his time to show Shadow his current self in the future, which is bound and sealed, explaining that after things got destroyed, people wanted to blame someone, so fearing Shadow's power, they blamed him and sealed him away. Shadow rejects the notion and they clash, with Mephiles ascending into a darker form and pitting his shadows against Shadow. Shadow is beaten back by Mephiles but is saved by Omega, who comes in with his mission to support Shadow, and is able to completely destroy all the shadows around him, and helps corner Mephiles. Mephiles opens a time rift and escapes, with Omega and Shadow hot on his heels. They return to their normal time, but Mephiles has escaped for now. Rejoining Rouge, Shadow asks her to track Mephiles while he pursues Eggman for answers to all of this. Also back in the city in the correct time, Sonic sees Eggman and Elise board a train and has gotta go fast in order to save her and destroy a bomb at the same time as Shadow, who drives an armed motorcycle to destroy Eggman's train. Shadow crashes in on Eggman and confronts him on who Mephiles is, and while the Doctor evades the question, he says it's linked to the Solaris disaster 10 years ago, and if Shadow brings Mephiles to him, he can explain more. Succeeding on his end, Sonic runs off with Elise again, but he's intercepted by Silver yet again. Silver is still intent on killing Sonic, paralyzing him with his powers, and Elise is snatched by Eggman in the same window of opportunity. This time, Shadow steps in, disrupting Silver and freeing Sonic. Silver confuses Shadow for Mephiles and wonders why he would save Sonic, but Shadow corrects him as Sonic dashes after Elise again. With the Chaos Emerald in his hand, Shadow easily defeats Silver, and now explains it's no use to try and fight as he has power over time and space now. Silver now pulls out his own Chaos Emerald, and in their clash they induce another Chaos Control. Shadow tries to tell Silver Mephiles isn't helping him create a better future, but instead destroy the past. Silver's confused, and Shadow urges them to use this time rift to find out what happened 10 years ago. In the past, they witnessed the old King of Solaris fail in their new energy experiment, and as things go critical, a young Elise wanders into the lab, and the old king sacrifices himself to shield her as the lab explodes. Shadow and Silver witness both the shadowy Mephiles and fiery Iblis spawn from his lab and split up to tackle each. Before they leave, the old king speaks up and hands Shadow the Scepter of Darkness in order to seal Mephiles. Shadow catches up to the formless Mephiles, introducing himself as Shadow and sealing him easily, with the vengeful Mephiles swearing revenge on Shadow personally. He uses his powers to contain the living flame when the old king comes in with Elise. He explains the living flame has been entrusted to the royal family, and the flames of disaster will awaken if left unchecked. Using a Chaos Emerald, the old king seals the living flame inside the royal soul of Elise since he's dying. As he asks Silver to take her somewhere safe, he urges her never to cry, as her tears will awaken the living flames within her, and Silver realizes Elise is actually the Iblis Trigger. As Shadow emerges, Silver lays Elise down and Shadow lays down the scepter too, since he knows what happens to it in the future, and Silver lays down his Chaos Emerald with her too. Returning to the present, Shadow meets with Rouge and explains he's found a way to reseal Mephiles, finds a new scepter, and joins Omega in his pursuit. Omega overpowers and destroys Mephiles' physical form, and Mephiles laughs, unsurprised, as it's Omega that eventually defeats and seals Shadow in the future too. When Shadow catches up, Omega reveals this, saying humanity has a habit of seeing powerful things as a threat someday, and Rouge mentions that even if the world turns against them, she'll stay his ally. Undeterred, Shadow continues on his mission of protection and pursues Mephiles, who's hunting for a new Chaos Emerald which will allow him to remerge with Iblis. This takes him to the desert, where they are too late in catching Mephiles. With a Chaos Emerald in his hand, Mephiles fights Shadow with an Ascended Darkness form, but he's no match for the Ultimate Life form, though as Shadow attempts to reseal Mephiles with the new scepter, Mephiles is too powerful now to go down the same way. With two emeralds in his possession, he surrounds the trio ready to destroy them, but Shadow responds by taking off his limiter rings and plowing through the clones easily, and escaping with Rouge and Omega. Destroying Eggman's latest robot, Sonic reclaims Elise and they cut into a nearby jungle to avoid Eggman's pursuit. When the coast seems clear, Elise confesses that while this adventure has been dangerous, she's also experienced a lot of new things thanks to Sonic, so she appreciates things a lot more. She almost tears up, but firmly remembers her father's hard creed never to cry, and Sonic reminds her to keep up a smile. Returning Elise home, Eggman now makes a public declaration that if Elise doesn't surrender herself, then he's going to destroy Soliana himself. Silver is in town as he meets up with Blaze and informs her Sonic isn't the Iblis Trigger, though wonders if Eggman plans to release Iblis through Elise. Elise complies, though Tails secretly tails her. On board, Elise asks Eggman why he wants to revive the Flames of Disaster, and Eggman wonders why she doesn't know. He explains Solaris' power lies in his eternal flames that have the power to manipulate time itself, and he aims to rule over time itself. However, the secret to that power lies dormant in Elise, as well as the Chaos Emeralds, which he continues to hunt. Tails tips off Sonic about Elise, and he passes 3 Soliana trials of intelligence, courage, and love in order to earn the privilege of being carried by a giant eagle to old Soliana. Silver runs through similar trials of friendship, memory, and heart right behind him. On the road to the castle, Silver meets up with Sonic, but this time to aid him, to which Sonic questions a sudden change of heart. Silver admits things have changed, and now must help the princess, which is good enough for Sonic. Working together, they make it through the castle, but at the same time, Eggman's carrier suddenly has an engine malfunction and crashes, exploding in the distance and killing Eggman and Elise. Sonic drops, thinking all is lost, but Silver points out they can go back a little earlier in time and change this event from happening. Taking out their Chaos Emeralds, they initiate Chaos Control, and as a new rift opens up, Sonic tosses Silver his Chaos Emerald, confident he'll save Elise, and thus change his timeline as well as the future Silver came from. Thanking him and bidding farewell, Sonic now jumps into the past that alongside Knuckles and Tails seeks to stop the egg carrier from launching in the first place. As Silver and Blaze return to their time, Silver reveals he now knows how to stop Iblis, and it doesn't involve changing the past. Hurrying to confront the Eternal Flame, he defeats Iblis yet again, but this time, like the king had shown him, he invokes the power of the Chaos Emeralds to seal the living flame within his own body. However, Silver is not of royal blood and cannot be a vessel, but Blaze steps up, revealing herself to be a princess from another dimension who can accept the flames, and does so, sacrificing herself and casting herself into a different dimension to save this world. As the world brightens for the first time in his life, it's a bittersweet victory for Silver as he swallows the cost of victory with the loss of his only friend. Back in the present, it falls to Sonic to stop Eggman, but Sonic isn't fast enough to stop the launch and instead boards the ship and gets to Elise just as the ship begins to fall. This actually saves Eggman too, as he instead boards his own mechanical wyvern and battles Sonic personally. The two enemies duel in the sky amidst a collapsing carrier ship, but the battle is won by Sonic the Hedgehog as Eggman tumbles away and Sonic leaps off with Elise. Using the wreckage to descend, Sonic and Elise finally breathe a sigh of relief and smile as the plan to revive Solaris seems to finally have been thwarted. However, Mephiles is still alive, and with his own Chaos Emerald, distracts Sonic and Elise long enough to sneak up behind Sonic and impale him from behind with a beam of light, killing him. Overcome with sudden shock, Elise breaks her lifelong creed of never crying and cries out in grief, with the living flame erupting around her. Mephiles cries victory at finally breaking the seal within Elise, and being able to re-merge with Iblis, he rises up and summons forth the 7 Chaos Emeralds to form the sun god Solaris. Blanketing the world with a bright light, everyone finds themselves in a strange distorted world, where even Silver is somehow there. Eggman notes that Iblis' seal has been broken, and this spatial distortion has reached across time as well. They then turn to see Sonic dead in Elise's arms, and realize this was all part of Mephiles' scheme, as now that he is reformed into Solaris, he will consume all existing timelines. As a being that exists in the past, present, and future, they cannot defeat Solaris as it is, but Silver refuses to give up, explaining that they can defeat it in the past, present, and future all at once. Shadow shoots that idea down as they would need Sonic for that plan, and Elise now notes she senses Sonic's spirit falling free in the wind. Silver proposes using the Chaos Emeralds to bring him back, and Eggman's sensors locate the 7 emeralds flung into the far corners of the distorted worlds. The 7 allies each split up to retrieve their respective gem, and succeeding, Elise is able to rally the power of the emeralds and her love into reviving Sonic. Reviving stronger than before as Super Sonic, Sonic shares his power with Shadow and Silver, and together the 3 hedgehogs blast off to confront the interdimensional god Solaris. Teaming up and exposing the physical consciousness of Solaris, they combine powers to destroy it once and for all. Without a consciousness to maintain itself, the body falls apart and collapses, until it becomes its original form, a tiny flame. Elise remembers now that Solaris was originally the Flame of Hope, and that her father attempted to grow and manipulate it in order to control time and prevent her mother from dying. In such a small form, even Elise can snuff out the flame of Solaris, but she announces that were she to do so, it would change the timeline to such a degree that none of the events they encounter together will have occurred, because Solaris would have ceased to exist in the first place. Reluctant to lose Sonic, she hesitates, but Sonic reminds her just to smile, and confident now, she puts out the flame of Solaris once and for all. As the game ends, time now reboots as Solaris never existed, and we see the Festival of Flames take place, with Sonic just a bystander now. As he rushes past, he blows off the feather off Elise's head, and she smiles, sensing something familiar somehow, and Sonic moves on from this adventure that had never happened. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 has enjoyed the success of selling over 2.2 million copies worldwide.